Okay, let's get into it. We have this phrase that gets thrown around constantly.
Oh,
You
constantly.
hear it in schools, you see it on, those cheesy motivational posters.
Right, with the eagle soaring over a mountain.
Exactly. Knowledge is
Yeah.
power, and it just feels abstract. It feels like something a teacher tells you to get you to do your homework.
It's a cliche.
Yeah.
And like all cliches, we sort of nod at it and then immediately forget it because what does it actually mean? Like, sure, reading a book makes me powerful, but
Yeah.
does it help me pay my bills?
Right. It feels like a metaphor for stay in school. But what's so fascinating about the source material we're digging into today is that it doesn't treat it like a metaphor at all. It treats it like a weapon.
A literal tactical weapon, yeah.
And it starts with this incredible, this really provocative thought experiment. It asks us to just strip away all the sentimentality from the phrase. If you actually knew, I mean, really, truly knew, not just guessed or hoped, the winning numbers for the lottery, what happens to your behavior?
This is such a great place to start because it reframes the whole idea. Think about buying a lottery ticket. For most of us, it's an emotional act, isn't it?
Totally. It's a couple bucks for a dream.
Exactly. There's hope, there's a little bit of anxiety, maybe even a little bit of shame that you're, wasting money on a 1 in a billion shot. You're gambling.
You're crossing your fingers, you're wishing.
But if you possess the knowledge capital K, if you have those winning numbers written on a slip of paper in your pocket, and, with 100% certainty that they are correct, all of that emotion just vanishes.
It's gone.
Uncertainty is gone.
Yeah.
You don't play the lottery, you execute a transaction. You walk into the store, you fill out the card, you hand it over, your heart rate doesn't go up, you don't hesitate.
It becomes mechanical. It almost becomes boring.
Boredom is a side effect of absolute certainty. And that's the absolute key to this entire philosophy. If you know the outcome, you don't act with passion or hope. You act with cold, hard efficiency.
The source brings up the stock market, too, with the same logic. If you weren't operating on a hunch or, a tip from your cousin, but on absolute hard knowledge of what a stock would do tomorrow.
You wouldn't be nervous.
No, you just make the call, buy this, sell that, you'd be rich by lunchtime. It's just simple cause and effect. There's no drama.
And that is precisely where our source material takes a very, very dark turn. It takes that exact same rigid, mechanical, emotionless logic and applies it to killing people.
This is where it gets really chilling for me.
Yeah.
Because the text starts describing this perfect method. And it's not about being some kind of raving psychopath with a chainsaw or, a crime of passion. It's about being an engineer.
Methodical is the perfect word.
Huh.
The narrator, who we can assume is the antagonist here that we never see their face,
Yeah.
they describe the act of murder as a logistics problem.
A logistics problem.
Yeah, they use this phrase that really stuck with me, meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes to describe murder prep. That's just...
It's so mundane, but that's the entire point. They say something like, how could you have a problem with preparation with your intelligence after all your training? They see the actual moment of violence as the easy part.
Right, like that's just a mechanical task.
Exactly. There are a million ways to end a life. That's just physics and biology. The real knowledge, the real power, comes in the setup and the cleanup.
Because if you're truly intelligent, you're not worried about the act itself. You're worried about the consequences. The text explicitly says you know more than most people about how the cops work.
And that line is so crucial after all your training. It implies this is not an amateur. This is someone who views the police investigation as the real chess match.
So it's not about running from the cops.
No, it's about making sure they never have a reason to chase you in the first place. If you know the algorithm the police use to solve crimes, how they canvass a neighborhood, how they look for DNA, how they check timelines and alibis, you just reverse engineer your actions to leave no data points.
It's the lottery numbers again. The winning combination is leaving no forensic evidence and having an unbreakable alibi. You just fill out the card correctly.
Precisely. The text says you go through it in your head just as carefully as you would mark the play card you knew for sure was going to win you a fortune. You leave nothing. It's not about escaping. It's about making the crime, from their perspective, unsolvable from moment one.
So we established this absolutely terrifying philosophy. Knowledge removes risk, and by removing risk, it allows you to commit the ultimate taboo without consequence. But then, just as we're in this dark internal monologue, the source pivots completely.
It hard pivots. We leave that dark headspace and we drop into a very specific, very real place. A restaurant called Mostro's in Tribeca.
And we meet our protagonist, our guide through this whole mess, Jack Reacher.
The man himself.
Now, For anyone who might be new to this world, Reacher's usually the guy who wanders into a town and, fixes a problem through a combination of brilliant deduction and extreme violence. But here, he's just sitting in a restaurant, and he's doing something that feels very connected to that knowledge is power theme. He's analyzing the room.
He's analyzing the dynamics of the city. I love that description because it tells you everything about Reacher's worldview.
Yeah.
He sees the city not as this chaotic mess of millions of people, but as a series of predictable patterns, like weather systems.
And he's looking at this specific place, Mostro's. Describe the vibe here because it sounds incredibly pretentious.
Oh, it's peak Tribeca. Brand new avant-garde Italian. You know the type. Expensive decor, lots of maple and white walls. Soft opera music playing.
And the food, what's he eating?
Yeah, tiny portions. Reacher's a big guy. The text always reminds us he's 6'5", 250, and he's staring at this huge, beautiful plate with maybe 7 or 8 handmade ravioli parcels on it.
That's not going to cut it.
Not even close. He says he's eaten there 10 times and is left hungry every single time.
So why does he keep going back?
Because he likes the quiet. It's almost always empty. And more importantly, Reacher knows why it's empty. The restaurant is trying to be the next big thing, but it hasn't caught on yet. It's stuck in that dangerous limbo where it's expensive and open, but no one's there.
And an empty, expensive place is a target.
It's a magnet. Reacher knows that that kind of emptiness attracts a very specific kind of predator. He calls it inevitable. The dynamics of the city dictate that any new business without established connections will get a visit from someone demanding protection money. It's not an if, it's a when.
It's a law of nature for him.
Exactly. Wolves look for the straggler in the herd. Criminals look for the business that doesn't have local protection yet. So Reacher isn't surprised by what's about to happen. He's basically waiting for it.
So he's sitting there nursing his tiny ravioli, and he's watching 2 distinct groups of people. First, there's this couple in the corner.
The dowdy couple, that's a specific word the text uses. A sandy-haired man and a dark-haired woman. They look tired, worn out, like they've just had the life drained out of them.
What's his read on them?
He pegs them as corporate types. Lawyers, maybe accountants. There's a briefcase on the floor between them. They look like 2 people who just finished a 14-hour shift and are too exhausted to go home and cook. They're just wallpaper.
He dismisses them pretty quickly, right?
Immediately. He categorizes them as safe. Background noise. And you have to flag this as a critical moment for our theme of knowledge. He thinks he knows what they are. He is certain.
And as we just established, certainty changes your behavior.
It makes you complacent. He stops paying attention to them because he's already processed and filed them away. His attention is drawn elsewhere.
Because the main event has just walked through the door.
2 very large men. The source describes them as likely Syrian or Lebanese, but with, and this is a great line, with the Arab scrappiness bred out of them by a generation of living in America.
That is such a specific Reacher-esque observation. What do you think he means by that?
He's making a distinction between functional muscle and just bulk. He sees them as dense. A soldier or a construction worker has muscle that does something. These guys, he thinks, are just heavy. They're well-fed. They're large, padded obstacles, not finely tuned weapons.
And they are there to do one thing.
Put the squeeze on the owner. It's classic racketeering 101. They walk right up to the owner, no subtlety. They want $200 a week, going up to $400 later. And they don't just ask nicely.
No, it's pure theater.
It is. The source describes their conversation as a powerful gale blowing through the room. They're loud, they take up space. One of them just picks up a clean plate from a sack and drops it on the floor. Smash.
Just to make a point.
Exactly. And the other one does this little pantomime show.
Right, he gestures at the liquor shelves,
Yeah.
those expensive high-end bottles, and he mimes swinging a baseball bat. He doesn't actually do it, but he puts the image, the idea, in the owner's head.
It's terrorism. It's not about the actual violence right now. It's about creating the expectation of violence, the fear of what could happen.
Now, most people, you or me, we'd probably just keep our heads down.
I'd be trying to become invisible.
Right. Finish your pasta, pay the bill as quickly as possible, and maybe call 911 from the safety of your apartment a block away.
Which is the rational, sane thing to do.
But this is Jag Reacher. So he waits for them to leave. They tell the owner they'll be back in an hour for the first payment. And then Reacher gets up and goes over to the owner.
And he helps clean up the broken plate. It's a small gesture, but it's really significant. It's a nonverbal way of saying, I'm on your side. Then he asks the owner the crucial question, when are they coming back?
The owner says, an hour.
And this is where we see Reacher's version of knowledge is power kick in. He doesn't just run out into the street and start a fight immediately. He doesn't yell. He prepares. He calculates. He asks to use the phone.
Who's he calling?
He calls his girlfriend Jody. And what's interesting is what he's calling to confirm. He needs to know she's not going to be home.
He's confirming a negative? He's clearing a schedule?
Exactly. She's a high-powered lawyer at a big white shoe firm, and she's pulling an all-nighter. So Reacher knows he has a free evening. No witnesses from his personal life. No one waiting up for him. His timeline is clear. Then he goes shopping.
Not for what you'd expect, though.
Not at all. Not for weapons. Not for a gun or a knife. He goes to an office supply store.
This is my favorite part of the entire setup. It feels so mundane, so completely out of place. He buys a label maker, one of those old-school clicky ones that punches white letters onto plastic tape, and a tube of super glue.
It seems absurd, doesn't it? You're about to go up against two enforcers who have baseball bats, and you're arming yourself with arts and crafts supplies.
But this goes right back to Reacher's understanding of power dynamics. He knows that just beating them up isn't enough. It won't solve the problem.
Why not? I mean, he's a huge, incredibly capable fighter. He could just knock them out and leave.
Because if he just beats them up, what happens tomorrow? They come back, and they bring more guys. And they'll take it out on the restaurant owner for what happened. Reacher needs to send a message, not just to them, but to their boss. A message that scares them more than their own boss scares them.
He has to change the narrative of the encounter.
Exactly. So he prints out two labels. The first one says, Mostro's has protection already.
Okay, that's a direct warning.
And the second one is the killer. Don't start a turf war with us.
Ah, the U.S.
The U.S. That one word is doing so much heavy lifting. Reacher knows that a lone vigilante is just a nuisance. A lone guy is a crazy person you can eventually deal with. But an organization, a rival gang moving in on your territory.
That's a real threat. That's a business problem for their boss.
He's manufacturing a turf war out of thin air. He is using information warfare, not just physical force.
And the book gives us this great insight into his motivation. The expert analysis in the text points out that this isn't even a logical decision for him. He doesn't know the restaurant owner that well. He's not a regular.
It's not personal.
No. It's described as an arbitrary refusal to let the strong terrorize the weak. It's just his fundamental operating principle.
He also has this great internal monologue about it, right? He remembers his mother telling him that cities are dangerous, that they're full of scary guys you have to watch out for.
And then he had this epiphany as a teenager. He looked in the mirror one day and realized, no, I am the scary guy.
That is such a powerful and, frankly, terrifying self-image to have.
It is, but he uses it. He weaponizes it. He projects that confidence. He knows that if he acts like the apex predator 999 times out of 1,000, other predators will back down. He's counting on the fact that these bullies are, at their core, cowards who rely on fear. And if he doesn't show any fear, their whole system just collapses.
So the hour is up, the stage is set, Reacher is waiting in the shadows of an alleyway next to the restaurant, and right on cue, the black Mercedes rolls up.
They're punctual. You have to give them that. Professional.
They get out of the car, they've got the baseball bats hidden under their long coats, and Reacher just steps out of the darkness and blocks their path. He doesn't yell, he doesn't threaten, he plays a role, he becomes the rival business manager.
He's channeling them, he's hurting them. He knows he can't have this fight on the sidewalk where people can see it. He needs them in the alley. So he tells them, I'm the guy who can pay you. He tricks them into thinking this is a negotiation. A transaction.
He's using their own greed and their own procedures against them.
Exactly. He lures them into the dark, away from any witnesses, and the second they are out of sight, the physics lesson begins.
And we really need to break this down because the source material treats this fight not like a brawl, but like a masterclass in biomechanics. Reacher doesn't just swing wild, every move is calculated. He uses biology and physics as weapons.
It's all about brutal efficiency. Let's start with the first guy. Reacher hits him with an elbow to the side of the head. Now the question is, why the elbow? Why not a fist?
I think most people, from watching movies, would assume a fist is the standard punch, a big right hook.
In movies, yes. In reality, the human skull is an incredibly hard, dense object. It's basically a helmet made of bone, designed to protect the most important organ in your body. The human hand, on the other hand, it's a delicate collection of tiny, fragile bones, the metacarpals.
So if you punch a skull with full force,
you will break your hand. It's a law of physics. Reacher knows this. The elbow, however, is a different tool entirely. It's a dense, blunt point of bone. basically a hammer attached to your arm. It can deliver a massive amount of force to a small area without shattering.
And the target is just as important as the weapon. He aims for the side of the head.
Lateral displacement. The brain floats in cerebrospinal fluid. It can handle being jarred front to back like from nodding, or a punch to the face reasonably well, but side to side. That shearing force is devastating. It rattles the brain in a way it's not designed to handle, and it just shuts the lights out instantly.
A complicated evolutionary reason, as he puts it.
Right, so one guy is down before he even knows there's a fight. Instant knockout. But the second guy, he's bigger. And he's got the bat out.
And he's angry.
He's angry, and he makes the classic mistake of every movie thug. He winds up, he pulls the bat way back behind his shoulder to go for the big, dramatic home run swing.
Which, to be fair, looks very scary.
It looks terrifying. If that thing connects, it's over. But to Reacher, it's just a math error.
Explain that. How is a baseball bat swing a math error?
It's the fundamental equation of momentum. Momentum equals mass times velocity. The bat has mass, it's heavy. If it hits you at full speed, at the end of its arc, it's going to break bones. But velocity takes time and distance to build.
It's like a car accelerating from a stoplight. It doesn't go from 0 to 60 instantly.
Exactly. At the very beginning of the swing, way back behind the guy's shoulder, the velocity of the bat is near 0. It's barely moving. So what does Reacher do? He doesn't back away from the swing. He steps in.
That is so counterintuitive. Your survival instinct is screaming at you to get away from the weapon.
But stepping in is actually the safest place to be. He closes the distance in a fraction of a second and catches the bat before it can generate any real speed. The text describes it as a harmless smack in the palms.
And because the thug is putting his entire body weight, all his momentum, into a swing that suddenly just stops?
All that kinetic energy has to go somewhere. The thug completely off-balances himself. He's expecting to swing through air, and instead he hits a brick wall. Reacher uses that forward momentum to just guide him, to throw him off his feet and into the wall. He uses the enemy's own energy against him.
So both guys are down in, 3 seconds? This isn't a brawl, it's a demolition. But Reacher isn't finished. This is where the office supplies come out.
This is the psychological warfare component we talked about earlier. This is the real message. He takes out the super glue and the labels he printed, and he glues the label that says, Mostro's has protection already, directly onto the second guy's forehead.
That is just, it's horrifying and kind of hilarious at the same time. You can't just peel that off.
No, you lose a layer of skin. That requires medical solvents. It's a permanent, humiliating badge of failure that he has to wear until he can get to a hospital. It completely destroys their tough guy image. Can you imagine walking into your boss's office with that glued to your face?
It's a walking advertisement that you failed. And then he does something even more cruel to the first guy, the one he knocked out.
He empties the rest of the tube of superglue into the guy's palms and just claps them together.
Chemical handcuffs.
Exactly. The guy is completely helpless. He can't drive, he can't fight, he can't open a door, he can't even hold his car keys. Reacher then forces the second guy, the one with the label on his head, to give the guy with the glued hands a piggyback ride out of the alley.
It's total abject humiliation. And he's not done. He even mocks their boss, this guy named Petrosian. He acts like he's never even heard of him. He's like, Petrosian, what is he, crazy? He's planting the seed of doubt, making them think that Petrosian is small time, that he's picked a fight with a much bigger, scarier organization.
And then finally, the cleanup. This goes right back to that perfect crime philosophy from the intro. Reacher takes their guns, M9 Berettas. He notices the serial numbers are filed off, which tells him they're pros, but he doesn't just leave the guns.
What does he do?
He field strips them, breaks them down into their component parts. He takes sand and grit from the alley floor and jams the firing mechanisms. Then he throws the different parts in the different corners of a dumpster. He smashes their phones. He leaves nothing usable.
He even leaves a $10 bill on a crate for the restaurant owner to cover the cost of the broken plate from earlier.
It's Reacher's moral code in a nutshell. He utterly destroys the aggressors, but he makes sure the innocent victim is made whole. It's a perfect self-contained act of justice in his mind.
So Reacher walks away from this feeling pretty good, right? He's the hero. He protected the weak. He upheld the dynamics of the city. He gets in his expensive car and starts the drive home.
But this is where the knowledge is power theme comes back to bite him. Reacher thought he had all the knowledge. He knew where the thugs would be. He knew their tactics. He knew how to beat them physically and psychologically. He controlled that entire situation perfectly because he had all the data.
But there was one crucial piece of information he was missing. One variable he miscalculated.
The couple. The
Yeah.
dowdy couple from the restaurant.
The ones he dismissed as safe. The ones he thought were just tired accountants. As Reacher pulls away from the curb, he happens to glance in his rearview mirror, and he sees the woman from the couple step out to the curb and watch his car go.
It's a small detail. He probably dismisses it. Maybe she's waiting for a cab.
Okay.
But it's the first sign that his knowledge was incomplete.
He drives north out of the city to Garrison, where he lives. The text says it takes him about an hour and 17 minutes. He's driving carefully, feeling like an alien in a settled landscape. He's coming down from the adrenaline. He just wants to get home.
He pulls into his long, dark driveway, and the world explodes with light. A total professional ambush. 2 sedans blocking him in, blinding floodlights, men with shotguns appearing out of the fog. It's a military-grade takedown. This is not a couple of local cops responding to a 911 call.
And who is it that taps on his window?
It's the dowdy woman from the restaurant. Except she's not dowdy anymore. She's holding up a gold shield. FBI.
Yeah. Talk about a plot twist. Reacher's first thought must be that he's been caught for the vigilante justice at the restaurant.
That's the only logical assumption. He just beat 2 men half to death in an alley. But if you look at the details, that doesn't add up.
Why not?
They have a search warrant for his house. You don't get a federal judge to sign a search warrant in the 90 minutes it took him to drive home. This wasn't reaction to the fight. This was planned. They were waiting for him. The restaurant was just where they happened to find him.
They were already watching him.
They were already watching him. He's ordered out of the car at gunpoint. The sandy-haired guy, who was also at the restaurant, starts tossing Reacher's car. And the woman, Agent Lamar, puts Reacher in the back of a sedan with her Sig Sauer pointed directly at his head.
The tension in this car ride is immediate and palpable. We need to talk about the dynamic between Reacher and Agent Lamar. It is toxic from the very first second.
Oh, it's poison. He's shoved into the back seat, and because he's so big, he has to twist his body to fit his legs under the front seat. He's looking at her because, she has a gun pointed at his face.
It seems reasonable.
And she immediately interprets this as him making advances. She accuses him of looking at her legs.
And Reacher, being Reacher, does not apologize or try to de-escalate.
Not a chance. He delivers this absolutely brutal line. He just says, "Not while there are dogs on the street."
Ouch! That is a nuclear response. He just instantly escalates the hostility. He's insulting her appearance, her professionalism, everything at once. He's making it clear he will not be intimidated.
So they drive him into Manhattan in stony, hateful silence. Not to a police station, but to the FBI field office at Federal Plaza. They take him up to the 21st floor, and they put him in a room that just sounds like a nightmare.
The battleship room.
Yeah. Gray concrete walls, gray paint, gray carpet. The only furniture is a single plastic garden chair. It's a sensory deprivation chamber. It's designed to unmoor you from reality, to make you feel isolated and uncomfortable.
And then they start this psychological game, the parade of faces.
It's a classic interrogation tactic. Reacher is sitting on the floor. He refuses to sit in the chair because he won't do what they tell him to. And every few minutes, a different agent opens the door, stares at him for 3 seconds without saying a word, and then leaves.
The unspoken message is, so you're the guy.
Exactly. We all know who you are. We're all watching you. They want him to feel observed, judged, and completely alone. They're trying to crack his composure before they even ask a single question. They want him sweating and desperate to talk.
Eventually, the herd, as he calls them, arrives. They march him into a proper interrogation room. And Reacher, being the hyper-observant guy he is, immediately notices something interesting about the group dynamics.
He spots the factions. And this is so key to his analysis of the situation. The FBI isn't a monolith. On one side, you have the visitors. That's Agent Lamar, the sandy-haired guy whose name we learned is Polton, and an older guy who looks like he has high blood pressure named Blake. Reacher pegs them as being from Quantico, the serial crimes unit,
The A-team.
the big guns from headquarters. And on the other side,
The locals. An agent named Kozo. He's from the Organized Crime Division, New York-based. And he looks annoyed. He looks outnumbered and unhappy to be there.
and in the middle, trying to run the show, is the referee, Assistant Director Deerfield.
So what does that tell Reacher?
It tells him the restaurant incident is probably a sideshow at best. The serial crimes unit from Quantico is running this show. The New York organized crime guy is just tagging along for some reason. And serial crimes deals with, well, serial killers, not low-level racketeers in Tribeca.
This is a much bigger problem than he thought.
A much bigger problem. They sit him down, the lights are bright, it's a classic interrogation setup. But Reacher decides right away he's not going to play by their rules. Deerfield tries to be the good cop, saying, "Right now I'm the best friend you got."
And Reacher immediately hits back with legal history.
He does. He says, "No, Ernesto A. Miranda is the best friend I got."
It's such a great moment. He refuses to say a single word until he's read his rights. But he doesn't just say, "I know my rights." The agents, thinking he's just some dumb grunt, start quizzing him, trying to mock him. They throw case names at him. Do you know Brewer? Do you know Duckworth?
They think he's a moron, as Deerfield calls him later. They assume he's just some muscle-bound drifter who watches too much TV. But Reacher just calmly rattles off a string of Supreme Court cases that followed Miranda. He knows the case law better than they do.
Let's actually dig into a couple of these, because Reacher citing them is a huge flex. He mentions Brewer v. Williams. What's that about?
That's a really famous 1977 Supreme Court case. It involved a man suspected of murdering a young girl. The police were driving him across Iowa, and during the drive, without his lawyer present, one of the detectives gave what is now known as the Christian burial speech.
What's that?
He basically guilted the suspect into revealing where the body was by playing on his religious conscience. He said things like, "This girl deserves a Christian burial." It was a form of psychological coercion.
And the court threw out the confession.
They did. They ruled that the detective had deliberately elicited incriminating information after the judicial process had already started, which violated the suspect's Sixth Amendment right to counsel. So by citing Brewer, Reacher is sending a very clear message to Lamar.
Which is?
I know that anything you tried to get me to say in the car ride over here is inadmissible. I know you were trying to trick me, and it didn't work.
That is just incredible. He's playing chess while they're playing checkers. What about the other one he mentions, Duckworth v. Egan?
That's a 1989 case, and it was about the specific wording of the Miranda warning. The police in that case told a suspect a lawyer would be appointed if and when you go to court. The suspect argued that this was misleading because he needed a lawyer right then, during the interrogation, not later in court.
What was the ruling?
The court actually sided with the police in that one, saying the warning was sufficient. But Reacher, bringing it up, shows that he understands the incredible nuance of the law. He's telling them, "I know the exact edges of what's legal. I know precisely what you are required to say to me, and if you deviate by a single word, I will use it to destroy your case."
He's performing his intelligence for them.
It's legal jujitsu. He's using their own system against them, and it signals to the FBI that they have made a severe, fundamental miscalculation about who they're dealing with.
Deerfield realizes this isn't working, so he pivots. He tries to profile Reacher, to attack his lifestyle. He goes on the offensive. You're unemployed. You've been out of work for 3 years. Your savings ran out 3 months ago. You're living off your rich girlfriend.
They're trying to shame him. They want to paint him as a parasite, a loser who mooches off a successful woman. This is a standard technique. You attack the subject's ego, hoping they'll get angry and emotional and start talking to defend themselves.
And Reacher's response is just perfect. He just says, "I'm having fun." He refuses to accept their frame. He won't be shamed.
He even turns it back on them. He points at Blake, the older agent with the high blood pressure, and he points at his wedding ring and says, "No worse than your wife does, living off of you, I expect."
Oh, that is mean.
It's surgical. He finds the potential weak points and insecurities in their own lives and presses on them. He's fighting to take control of the room psychologically.
But then, after all this posturing, the questioning finally shifts, and we get to the core of why Reacher is actually there.
Right. Agent Koso, the organized crime guy from New York, he takes his shot. His theory is simple. He's convinced Reacher is a rival enforcer working for some other gang to muscle in on Petrosian's turf.
It's a reasonable theory, to be fair.
It's totally reasonable. He cites Reacher's expensive house, his expensive car, his lack of legitimate income, and his professional dismantling of Petrosian's man. He says, "Bullshit, you're a loner." It fits all the facts that Koso has.
But Reacher just denies it.
He says, "Nobody sent me anywhere." And that's when the serial crimes agents, the ones from Quantico, take over for good. Agent Lamar leans forward. The text says the light makes her face look like a skull, and she drops 2 names.
Amy Callan and Carolyn Cook.
And suddenly all the air just leaves the room. This isn't about gangsters. This isn't about turf wars. These are women. Women from Reacher's military past.
And Reacher's demeanor changes. He admits he knew them. Callan was a sergeant at Fort Wythe. Cook was a lieutenant at NATO.
Notice the detail and the respect there. Reacher remembers exactly who they were, their rank, where they served. He's not dismissive, but the FBI's questions are not respectful. They immediately ask, "Did you have sex with them?"
Lamar is very aggressive about this. Did you want to? Would they have said yes if you'd asked?
They're building a profile. They suspect a sexual motive. They're trying to paint him as a sexual predator who targets military women he has some kind of authority over.
Reacher denies it flatly. He says he was with someone else at the time. But the conversation then pivots to a broader and very telling topic, women in the military.
This is a crucial segment for understanding Reacher's actual character versus the character the for any kind of misogyny. He asks if Reacher approves of women in combat roles. He's waiting for Reacher to say, no, women are weak, which would fit right into their profile of him.
But Reacher does the opposite. He cites history. He talks about Russian women in World War II, the snipers. He talks about the Israeli Defense Forces. He says, basically, if you need fighters, women can do it the same as anybody else.
But then he adds this pragmatic caveat, and this is where it gets really complex and interesting. He says he only ever had one issue based on studies, or at least anecdotal evidence from his time in service. And that's that male soldiers are statistically more likely to stop and help a wounded female comrade than a wounded male one.
Which, in the heat of battle, slows down the advance.
Exactly. He says the problem isn't the women's capability, it's the men's instinct. Men are socially conditioned to protect women. So if a guy in your unit gets shot, his buddy might keep moving forward to take the objective. If a woman gets shot, that same buddy is more likely to stop and render aid. Reacher, the ultimate pragmatist, sees that as a tactical liability.
He calls it something that needs to be trained out of them.
It's a very cold, very professional military assessment. The mission always comes first. It's not about gender, it's about operational efficiency.
And Lamar, seeing an opening, tries to trap him. She asks him, so if you and I were advancing together and I got wounded, you'd just leave me there.
And Reacher delivers the line of the entire deep dive. He just smiles a little and says, in your case, without a second thought.
It's so cold, but also kind of funny.
It's perfect because it highlights that Reacher judges individuals, not groups. He respects women in the military as a concept, but he specifically dislikes her. He's telling her, my problem isn't that you're a woman. My problem is that you're an asshole I wouldn't trust.
So after that exchange, Reacher finally explains his real connection to Amy Callan, one of the names.
And it wasn't a romance. It wasn't sexual at all. It was a criminal investigation. Sergeant Callan came to Reacher when he was a military police officer because she was being sexually harassed by a superior officer.
And Reacher took her side?
Immediately. He investigated, he believed her story, and he arrested the accused officer.
But the officer was acquitted in court.
He was. Reacher says, the officer won his case. Callan left the service. But even though he was acquitted, the accusation ruined the officer's career anyway.
And what's Reacher's take on that outcome?
This is where we see his moral compass again. He doesn't see it as a win or a loss. He just says the whole thing was a mess. 2 careers were ruined. He felt sorry for Callan, and he felt sorry for the Army. But the key takeaway is that he sided with the victim. He believed a woman who came to him for help when others might not have. This directly contradicts the entire profile the FBI is trying to build of him as some kind of misogynistic killer. He was her defender.
So, okay, let's recap where we are at the end of all this. Reacher starts the night eating pasta in a quiet restaurant. He single-handedly dismantles a protection racket using applied physics and superglue. He gets ambushed and arrested by a federal SWAT team. And now he's in an interrogation room being grilled about 2 women from his Army days who are, we can now assume, the victims of a serious serial crime.
And the FBI, specifically the Serial Crimes Unit, is completely convinced he's their guy. They have their profile, and he fits it perfectly on paper. He's a drifter. He has elite violent skills. He has a direct personal connection to the victims. He has no alibi, no job. And he certainly fits the physical description of someone who could overpower them.
It brings us right back to that opening concept. Knowledge is power. Reacher had the tactical knowledge to win the fight in the alley. He knew exactly how to throw an elbow, how to intercept the bat, how to use the glue for psychological effect. He controlled that situation perfectly because he believed he had all the necessary data.
But he lacked the strategic knowledge. He had a blind spot. He didn't know the FBI was watching him. He didn't know that Amy Callan and Caroline Cook were dead or missing.
He was, to borrow a phrase, running blind.
Precisely. If knowledge is power, then ignorance is vulnerability. And Reacher is now in a situation where his immense physical strength and tactical genius don't matter at all. He can't elbow strike his way out of a federal investigation. He's playing a game where the other side holds all the cards. They have the files, the forensic evidence, the timeline.
And he has to be realizing, in that gray room, that despite all his careful preparation, despite executing the perfect method in the alley fight, he walked right into a much larger, much more sophisticated trap that he couldn't see.
So the real question for you as the listener is this. Is Reacher's internal knowledge, his absolute certainty about his own innocence, enough to save him? Or does the system's knowledge, all the circumstantial evidence they're piling up against him, end up being more powerful than the truth?
That is the terrifying thought to leave you with. You can do everything right by your own code. You can be the smartest, strongest guy in the room. You can know the physics and the law inside and out. And you can still end up being the prime suspect in the chair.
Because you never, ever know who is watching you from the dark.
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time.